Well, stimulating entrepreneurship is the key to igniting economic growth and job creation in South Africa. Once regarded as a powerhouse of Africa, the country slipped from 39th place in the 2011 Global Entrepreneurship and Development Index to 45th. And joining us for a look at entrepreneurship as a driver of economic growth is Tebogo Skwambane. She's a partner at Monitor Group. Thanks so much, Tebogo, for joining us this afternoon. Well, we certainly have seen the South African government prioritize the growth of SMEs in the country, and still it's a sector that we don't see enough growth or as much growth as we should be seeing. Why is that the case? What are some of the impediments?
I think that even though we are making all the right noises about the importance of small and medium-sized enterprises and entrepreneurship, our economy isn't structured in order to encourage the growth of entrepreneurship. For example, across our major industries, the industries are dominated by large corporates, and legislation favors the growth of large corporates rather than small and medium-sized enterprises. Furthermore, we've got administrative burdens, such as the registration process itself is not necessarily a problem, but we've got the National Credit Acts, we've got Consumer Protection Act, we've got labor laws, we've got all these things, all these legislations and regulations that make it very difficult for a small business, for a new business to grow, and for a small business to become, even more significant. So I think we're structurally set up to make it very difficult for entrepreneurship to grow. But there's a lot that we can do still.
We've had Alishia will back me up on this. We've had differing opinions on SMEs and the promotion of and sustaining of SMEs that have started in South Africa. We've had several weeks of commentators coming on and saying, no, it's a very sterile environment for SMEs. And yet we had one chap on come last week whose name briefly escapes me, who said, actually, no, the environment that we're creating in South Africa is actually very good compared to our peers. Where do you stand on that?
I think that there are aspects of the environment in South Africa that we can be proud of, that we can be happy about, and that we can celebrate. But I think that there are a number of other things that really do require some attention. A couple of them I've already mentioned. I think there's some legislations that we could look at, and I think that as we bring in new legislation, we really should be looking at how do they impact small and medium-sized businesses and new enterprises uniquely relative to a large corporate, in order to ensure that we don't make it difficult for enterprises.
This ties into some commentary I picked up on a Forbes article where a key distinction was made between opportunity entrepreneurs and necessity entrepreneurs, and where you need opportunity entrepreneurs to launch new businesses in response to market needs, as opposed to those entrepreneurs coming to the fore as a result of mere necessity and just needing to be a part of some kind of economy. And that distinction needs to be made, because it's not the necessity entrepreneurs that actually add to economic growth in any country. I mean, are we paying enough attention to detail as minute as that?
I don't think we're paying enough attention at all, but I do think that the distinction is important. I think that, as you articulated it very well, I think the opportunity entrepreneur is really the high impact, high growth entrepreneur that could come into whatever industry they choose and potentially create significant job creation, positively impact on job creation as well as on the economy. There is space for the necessity entrepreneur, though. I think that necessity entrepreneurs are those who would otherwise be out looking for jobs, and this is a way to make a living and possibly employ a family member or two, but at least keep a family going. So I do think that as we look at entrepreneurship, as we look at the laws that impact on them and what support is out there for them, we do need to make that distinction, and the needs are very, very different.
Tebogo, I've sort of done a complete U-turn over the last couple of weeks for reasons that I alluded to in my last question. I always thought that the money wasn't available. I always thought that if you went into an institution, not necessarily a bank, but an institution that backed SMEs or fledgling SMEs anyway, the money actually wouldn't be there. But what I'm seeing from a couple of your slides has completely changed my mind. You say South Africa's sophisticated financial markets are an enabler, and an emerging culture of entrepreneurship is evidence. In fact, what the break on our SME scene is skills and infrastructure.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of debate going on about this issue of finances available. And our study really, we looked at the perceptions of entrepreneurs and those who work with entrepreneurs, and we benchmarked against peers in sub-Saharan Africa, as well as abroad, so some high income, middle income and low income countries. And what we're seeing is that in South Africa, the finance finance options are available, but the issue is accessing finance for small and medium-sized enterprises, and for new businesses. And it is about how prepared the entrepreneur is to fulfill the requirements of the banks or of the lender that they're looking for financing from. So we've got some bits to celebrate there in terms of diversity of options available.
Yeah, Tebogo, just to, in closing, I mean, I spoke to Sir Ronald Grierson of the Blackstone Group once, and he said, and this is out of the mouth of a private equity investor, that we don't embrace failure. Unlike other nations, we don't use failure as a stepping stone to success. To what extent is that merely because we can't afford it? We can't afford to go down that route because of our social situations.
I think there is an element of that, but I also think it's an issue of time. We haven't necessarily seen enough entrepreneurs come out and win big as well as fail big, and I think the more we see some of that, the more we'll see less of a fear of failure. I do think also that there are some stories that we are not celebrating. There are some now successful entrepreneurs like the Herman Mashabas of the world. We don't necessarily see their whole story. We don't necessarily have a full appreciation of what their journey has been and how much they've had to battle against and how much failure they have experienced before becoming really successful. So there's some room around educating that's required.